Okay, so those were the changes about tax. So a few there, numerous changes, I would say. So all in all, together, depends on how they impact your clients that you need to consider. But the next one I'd like to look at is the fringe benefits tax. And since 1st of July 86, that was when we had FBT introduced to us. Has been always changes along the way, and the car fringe benefits has always been one been discussed all the time. Would have been certainly the last few budgets is one which always been a persistent consideration of whether this could be taken away. And even just before Tuesday, I was thinking, oh, gee, are we going to pull this off completely? But having said that, I think car manufacturing and car sales in Australia is very important to us, and certainly as a whole it is a very important industry, very similar to the retail sales as well. So if we were to take this away completely, I think it would be totally disastrous, and the flow through would have been just quite amazing there. And therefore my thoughts were, if they're going to change, then it's not about taking the whole exemption away, is perhaps tinkering with the requirement. And certainly the Greens would have supported this. We know the current arrangement is that the more that one drives, the better that the FBT, the better the FBT position would be, and therefore the lesser tax that would apply. So in saying that, the change that was put to us on Tuesday, and that applies for new contracts entered into after budget night, 7:30, the change in the way that the statutory method would apply, in terms of the percentages that would apply. You can see it in the table there. At the moment, a 0.26 factor. The way that this factor works is it works on, you will pick up the factor depending on how the distance you've driven during the year, and with this factor you then calculate what the FBT is based on the value of the car. So the value of the car is fixed. What really changes as a variable is how much you drive. So you can see if you drive less than 15,000, then the factor is 0.26. But by the time you drive more than 40,000 k and probably kill the car as well at the same time, it's 0.07. So that's pretty much 3 or 4 times more, or less rather, when you do at 40,000 k. So this is obviously encouraging people to sort of drive a lot more to get the tax and the FBT reduced. And if you're into salary packaging, what that means is the employer would pay the tax and recharge it to the employees or your clients. It was also interesting to see a graph in the last week or so, could have been, I think might be included in the budget papers as well, where in supporting the change for the factors, in supporting the car fringe benefits change that we can see here, is what the government has done is to show the number of, well, each year employees have to put in a declaration of how much they've driven during the year and therefore calculate what the factor is. It's interesting to see the spikes at various points, and surprising or not surprising, the spikes at someone declaring that they've just driven 15,200 k just went through the roof, and then it drops, and then the next level where there were a lot of people who declared they've done 25,020 k spikes up again. So certainly you could see that people are trying to achieve just over those thresholds, and therefore reducing the factors there. So to change all that, then what we're moving towards is to have a fixed rates, and from 1st of July 2014, then there will just be a 0.2 factor compared to the various rates that we have now. I wish we could have just changed. I wish we could have just changed the rates just from 10th of May 2011 or from 1st of April 2012, which is the next FBT year. Certainly it would be much easier if we just do the 0.2. But we're not doing that, so it's going to be a gradual reduction over the next 3 or 4 years. But we will get there from 1st of April 2014. there will be just a straight 0.2 there. Now I've got a question that's just come through. The question is, for FBT, I presume the new contracts refer to new lease agreements entered into after budget night. How would it apply if employer owns the car and provides it to employees directly through the employment package rather than taking out a lease? And what is the definition of a new contract here, new employment contracts? There are quite a few questions all in all in that question. So it's about 4 questions in one question, but I'll take them all. New contracts is not been defined as yet, so it is in the announcement. So I would make assumption at the moment that new contract, new lease certainly would be. Certainly if you get into the case of running out now to buy a new car, certainly that would be new contract. I did have it in my mind too, like again, if you're into salary packaging and leasing, you will know that even if you take a lease for a 2-year lease, certainly at the end of it, you have an option to extend your lease to 3 years or 4 years. So again, I'm not quite sure if at this point in time, without having the bills and legislation to say, would that constitute a new contract or not? So that question, I'll just have to take a rain check on it. But certainly, if you're getting onto a new car today and run out after my presentation, say, hey, this is great, and get a new car, that would certainly be a new contract. What about employers that owns the car? Again, not quite clear at this stage, but certainly I would have thought that with existing car, these days there are not too many sort of fleet of white cars that we can see these days. Good thing about salary packaging these days is you can actually go out and buy the car of your dream as opposed to the white Holden or Ford that you pick up from the company car park. So again, with those ones there, I would be surprised that it would be a new contract because certainly the employers would already have had ownership of the car itself. So that one I'm quite happy to speculate, if I could use that word, that if you own the car by the employer already, then that probably would be the case, that it would be under the old contract. And that brings me to my point that if it's an old contract and if you do drive a lot, you keep on driving a lot for the next 2 or 3 years, certainly that the old rates would still apply. But what I like to point out at the moment is, and in fact I was pretty much jumping with joy, well, Nigel didn't see me doing that, but I was certainly jumping with joy when the rate has changed to 0.2. As much as we're losing those ones above 40,000 or even 25 to 40, and I do agree somewhat with the Greens that it shouldn't be the case where we should drive a lot more to get a reduction in tax. But why I was jumping with joy was I've had cases where the clients are thinking about salary packaging and getting this benefit, but they drive less than 15,000 K. So this is great because at the best, I guess the borderline where one should be doing this is really 15 to 25, and that's the factor of 0.2. So by giving me 0.2 all the way through, I'm not too concerned with those over 25 and 40 anyway to start off with. I think they're great if they did get a benefit for the last few years. But those ones under 50,000, that's given me heaps. They are giving me a lot of exposure. Certainly more than before, where now I can get out to people who drive actually less than 15 to say, hey, look, this is the benefit that now you can have, and it's a lot more effective, and therefore at the optimum point, which I always thought about at least 0.2 factor, which you had to drive between 15 and 25,000 now, you don't have to do it anymore. So therefore, for your clients, I had a few just in the last 6 months, you can now go back and say, look, hey, let's have a relook again at this, and therefore you can now have your car of your dreams, and therefore we can package it at 0.2. So let's look at this. Then from 1st of April 2012, there will be a lot more people who can go onto it, and by the time we get to certainly 2014, 0.2 will be the standard one that we can apply. The other thing that I would urge you to look at too is, remember that this is only a statutory method to calculate the FBT, but certainly if you have clients who's got a high level of business use, potentially perhaps a business logbook style could still be advantageous, so therefore you need to compare which way would produce the best results there. So I'll leave you with that one. I am pretty excited about it, so I hope you are too, and start thinking along this line for your clients who may be able to take benefit on this change.